All right, let's dive in. You've sent us some really interesting stuff this time. YouTube videos, articles, all about like casual conversations and travel and food, just those everyday things.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how all that stuff, like the way people chat or what they choose to eat, can actually tell you a lot about like cultural differences.
Right. It's like hidden clues. Okay, so let's kick things off with a big one. How different cultures decide what being an adult actually means. So in this one video, 1.5-hour English conversation lesson, I think that was the title, the hosts, Vanessa and Dan, were talking about how in the US, there's no like dot set thing,
Yeah.
no big event that says, boom, you're an adult now. It's way more like dot fluid.
Oh, for sure. And that's a huge contrast to cultures that have those rites of passage things,
Yeah.
the ceremonies and milestones that are all tied to like taking on responsibilities and stuff. Those really lay it out like, okay, this is how you become a grown-up.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if having those clear markers would like change how young people here think about becoming adults.
Oh, and Dan had this interesting point too. He said that for him, becoming a dad was the biggest thing. Like that's what made him feel like a true adult because suddenly, bam, huge responsibility. What do you think? Does that resonate with like the experience of parents in other cultures, or is that more of a U.S. thing?
Probably a mix of both, honestly. I mean, becoming a parent anywhere comes with a whole new level of responsibility, right?
True.
But how society views that change, that can be different. In some places, being a parent, the ultimate sign of adulthood, but in others, maybe it's more about money or your career.
So like no one-size-fits-all answer, which is kind of cool in itself. Okay, let's switch gears for a sec, have some fun with those funny stories we mentioned. Vanessa and Dan shared some hilarious stuff about their first jobs. Dan washing dishes at 16, he said his only speeds were slow and stop. I was cracking up. Especially that part where he cuts his finger on broken glass in the dirty dishwater. Ouch. Oh, first jobs. Always good for a laugh, right? It's like a universal experience.
Yeah.
Messing things up, having those little aha moments. It's all part of figuring out the working world. And it's usually kind of messy and awkward no matter where you are. That's what makes it funny. We can all relate to it.
Total relatable content. We've all been there. Oh, and Vanessa's first job. Selling pagers. Talk about a blast from the past. Even back then, she knew it was a dying technology.
Wow, that really shows you how fast technology changes, right?
Yeah.
Something that's super high-tech one day is practically a museum piece the next.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what we're using now that'll be totally obsolete in a few years.
Right, like what's going to be the next pager? Okay, this story about Dan is, well, it's kind of different. He got fired from a job selling photos at a tourist spot because someone stole one of his pictures. And instead of, chasing after the thief, he just shrugged it off. Seems like he wasn't too attached to the job, huh?
Yeah, that's not your typical reaction, is it?
Right.
It kind of makes you think he had different priorities, maybe. Valuing like personal freedom over the job itself, or even money. Or maybe it's a cultural thing. In some places, losing face or looking incompetent is a much bigger deal than losing a photograph,
So true. It's like those tiny glimpses into people's choices can tell you so much about what they really value and what's normal in their culture. Okay, speaking of choices, let's talk about those, oh, why did I buy that moments, those regretful purchases. Dan told this story about buying crazy expensive headphones that were actually uncomfortable, and then, get this, their cat chewed through the cord and destroyed them.
Oh, the psychology of buyer's remorse. It's really interesting because it's not just about the money wasted. It's about like the emotional side of it, The excitement before you buy something is often way better than the actual satisfaction. And then in Dan's case, you've got the pet chaos factor thrown in, which is funny, but also kind of sums up how unpredictable life can be,
I've definitely had my share of what was I thinking purchases. Have you? I feel like it's a pretty universal experience. Okay, enough about regrets. Let's talk about something a bit more fun. Travel. Vanessa and Dan mentioned a few U.S. spots they were dying to visit. Their list is amazing. Top of the list, the Grand Canyon. No surprise there. It's just breathtaking. Right?
Yeah, the Great Canyon, it's like, it just makes you feel awe, It's a reminder of just how massive and powerful nature is. I think that's why people are so drawn to it, especially in a world that feels so dominated by like human-made stuff.
Totally. It puts things in perspective. They were also super into exploring the Pacific Northwest, Seattle especially, the coffee, the scenery.
Seattle's a popular one these days. I think it's because it represents that kind of lifestyle a lot of people craze. That mix of city life and nature. Work hard, play hard, but still be connected to the outdoors.
Best of both worlds, for sure. Oh, and Yosemite National Park. They even had this hilarious plan to, like, crash Dan's parents' vacation there so they could get free babysitting for their 2-month-old. The things we do for travel, right? And then Hawaii. Volcanoes, scuba diving. It sounds like they want a good mix of adventure and relaxation.
I love that they have such a varied list. I mean, the Grand Canyon and Yosemite, those are your classic bucket list items, right? But then Seattle and Hawaii, those are more about the experience, the vibe. It's really interesting how travel preferences can be like a little window into what people are looking for in life.
It's like their travel soul, right?
Yeah.
What about you? Any top destinations? Are you a natural wonders person, a culture vulture, or more of a beach bum?
You know, at the end of the day, travel is all about the stories we collect, the experiences and memories that help us understand the world and ourselves too. And it's so interesting to see how those stories play out differently for everyone.
Beautifully said. Okay, let's go from travel adventures to culinary delights. Vanessa and Dan talked about their favorite foods to cook at home, too. Dan's all about those hearty, stick-to-your-ribs meals, chili, tacos. He even admitted it was probably a guy thing, wanting to cook once and eat for days.
That preference for bulk cooking. It might be more than just a guy thing, though. Think about it. In today's world, everyone's so busy, right? Especially guys, maybe. And having a big batch of something ready to go, it saves time. Lets you focus on other things.
Meal prep on a grand scale. Vanessa, though, she's all about those fresh, lighter options. Like gazpacho, she described it as cleansing, which is so interesting. It shows how food can evoke different feelings and associations, you know.
Oh, absolutely. What we choose to eat is connected to so many things, our culture, personal taste, even our emotions, like you said. For some, it's pure fuel, and for others, it's like self-expression almost, or a way to connect with their heritage.
And they were talking about this Italian vegetable soup, but they weren't even sure if it was authentically Italian. It's funny how certain dishes get linked to cultures, even if their origins are kind of fuzzy. What about you? What are your go-to home-cooked meals? Any signature dishes?
You know, cooking at home is like a way to connect with so many things. Our culture, experimenting with flavors, or just the simple joy of making something delicious. It can be really social, too, bringing people together.
It's like culinary creativity. Now, let's switch gears again. Dream homes. Everyone has one, right?
Their vision of the perfect living space. Dan's was so interesting. He wanted this huge room, vaulted ceilings, massive windows overlooking the Mediterranean Sea.
Now, that's a view. It kind of says he wants both grandeur and that connection to nature, right? And the Mediterranean setting adds to that. It's all about beauty, relaxation, a slower pace of life.
And it gets better. He also wanted a dedicated game room, fully loaded pool, ping pong, board games, video games, the ultimate entertainment hub. Sounds like he's got a playful side.
Yeah.
Definitely social, too. He values leisure time, having fun, and having a dedicated space for all that. It's like he wants balance, you know, a place to unwind and recharge after work and all that.
His own personal retreat, Vanessa, though. All about the views. Big window in her main living space overlooking mountains. But not totally isolated. She wanted to be part of a community, but still have that nature connection. Plus, a dedicated space for filming her YouTube videos, of course.
What about your dream home? Grand and luxurious, like Dan's seaside escape, or something else entirely?
The idea of a dream home is so personal, right? It's all about what we value, what we aspire to, how we see ourselves living. It's a space to express ourselves, to create a sanctuary that really fits our needs and desires.
Where we can truly be us. Okay, now we all need ways to unwind, right? Let's talk relaxation techniques. Dan was all about playing sports to clear his head. Just focusing on that physical activity, that simple goal of like putting the ball in the hoop, helped him forget his worries. He mentioned hockey too, just shooting the puck around as a way to chill. That's a great example of how being active can be like mindfulness almost. Shifting your focus away from stress, doing something fun and physical. Plus, endorphins. Instant mood boost.
Win-win. Vanessa was more into taking walks to relax, just getting out of the house, changing her surroundings, you know, helped her clear her head and get a fresh perspective. They both agreed that better sleep was key for handling stress too, although they acknowledged that everyone's sleep needs are different.
You know, sleep is so important for like everything. Well-being, managing stress. It lets your brain and body reset so you can deal with challenges and make better decisions.
Total brain reset. And they had this cute tradition of tech breaks, disconnecting from all their devices for a whole day. They said it helped them be more present and mindful, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with notifications and stuff, right?
Yeah, these days a tech break is almost essential. It's about disconnecting from all that digital noise and reconnecting with ourselves and the world around us. Finding that balance, you know.
Digital detox for the soul. Dan also tried counting his breaths to fall asleep and calm his mind when he was stressed. Simple, but surprisingly effective, right?
Oh, yeah. Breathing exercises are used in all kinds of mindfulness practices. They help regulate your heart rate, calm your nervous system. It's like a built-in stress reliever we can use anytime, anywhere.
Pretty handy. Vanessa was curious about meditation, asked viewers if they'd tried it. It's interesting how different relaxation techniques work for different people. What helps you relax? The active stuff or the quieter practices? Maybe you've got your own unique ways to de-stress.
It's amazing how our idea of relaxation and stress management is always changing, right?
Yeah.
We have the traditional stuff like exercise and meditation, but there are also all these new approaches using technology or like sensory experiences. It's all about finding what works for you and making it part of your life.
Your own personalized chill-out routine. Okay, get ready for this. Did you know that some turtles can breathe through their butts? I know, right?
It sounds crazy, but it's true. Certain aquatic turtles have this special opening. It's called a cloaca, and it's like a multi-purpose thing. Anyway, it lets them absorb oxygen from the water. Pretty cool adaptation. It lets them stay underwater for a long time.
Dan was telling the story about how his mom mentioned this fact out of nowhere, and they all laughed at her because it sounded so ridiculous. Turns out she was right all along.
See, it's a good reminder to always be open to new information, even if it sounds a little out there at first. Sometimes the weirdest things are true. And that's how we learn and grow, right?
Okay, prepare to be amazed again. Caterpillars literally digest themselves inside their cocoons before becoming butterflies. Dan always pictured it as them just, like, wrapping themselves in a blanket, but it's way more complex. Their body is basically turned into soup while their DNA rearranges itself to form a butterfly. It's wild.
Metamorphosis is one of nature's most incredible shows, right? It's like it challenges everything we think we know about biology, and it reminds us that even when change seems chaotic or destructive, it can lead to something beautiful and amazing.
Nature's magic show. Here's another one. Albatrosses mate for life and only see each other once a year. They fly incredible distances, but they always manage to find each other at the same spot on land to breed. Talk about long-distance relationships.
Their monogamy and navigation skills are incredible, right? They show just how resilient and adaptable some species are, even with all the environmental challenges they face. It really makes you think about instinct and the power of those bonds in the natural world.
And last but not least, we have the mantis shrimp. This tiny creature has a super-powered punch. It can actually break through bulletproof glass with its claws. Vanessa said it's almost impossible to keep them in aquariums because they're so strong. Can you imagine?
The mantis shrimp's punch is like a biomechanical marvel. It shows you just how extraordinary nature can be, even in the smallest creatures. It also makes you realize how connected everything is in nature. Even a tiny creature can have incredible abilities that play a role in the whole ecosystem.
Right. Never underestimate nature. Okay, we've covered some amazing nature facts, but let's switch gears again and talk about something a bit more human. Small talk. It's something we often do without thinking, but it's actually super important for social interaction, especially in English-speaking cultures. And we've got a bunch of sources on this. 100 small talk questions and answers, 48 questions that'll make small talk easier, even 7 interesting English small talk topics.
Small talk is like social glue. It helps us connect, find common ground, navigate those first interactions with people we might not know well. It's a big part of social etiquette in lots of cultures, and if you can master it, it can really help you build relationships, both personal and professional.
One of the sources, Improve Your English Conversation Skills, had some really cool tips that went beyond the usual give compliments, ask open-ended question stuff. Like, they talked about making your compliments specific, so instead of just, you look nice, you could say that color really suits you, or I love how you've styled your hair. It shows you're paying attention, makes the compliment feel more genuine.
Specificity is key. It shows that you're actually engaged in the conversation, that you value what makes the other person unique.
They also emphasize open-ended questions. Those ones that don't just need a yes or no answer. It encourages the other person to, share more, which can lead to more interesting conversations, right?
Absolutely. Open-ended questions are how you get past that surface-level small talk and get into a real dialogue. You're inviting the other person to elaborate, which can help you find shared interests, spark new ideas. It deepens the connection.
It's like turning small talk into a launch pad for a deeper conversation. Now think about your own culture for a minute. Are the rules of small talk different? Any topics that are off limits? It's fascinating how those conversational norms can change from place to place.
Oh yeah, the differences in how cultures communicate are huge and so interesting. Understanding those nuances can prevent misunderstandings and help you build stronger relationships across cultures. It's about recognizing that what might be polite in one culture could be seen totally differently in another.
It's all about being mindful. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about understanding native English speakers. I know from experience that it can be tough, especially when you're just starting to learn the language. There was this video, Understand Native English Speakers, with this advanced listening lesson that pointed out some of the things that trip people up.
Yeah, the subtle things in spoken language like word stress, how words are connected, dropping certain sounds,
Huh.
it can be really hard for non-native speakers to fully grasp what's being said.
Word stress was a big one for me, like which syllable to emphasize. And it can completely change the meaning of a word. Took me a while to get that.
Word stress is huge E in English. It affects the whole rhythm and flow of speech, and if you get it wrong, it can change everything. For people learning English, it means they need to be extra aware of those subtle shifts in emphasis and how they change meaning.
And then there's how native speakers kind of mush words together and drop sounds, or it's like a secret code sometimes.
It happens in lots of languages, but it can be a real challenge for English learners. It often takes a change in how you listen, plus lots of exposure to real spoken English to get used to that natural flow.
Do you remember a time when you were totally lost in a conversation because of those nuances? Maybe you misheard something or got the wrong idea. It's happened to me and it can be a bit embarrassing, but hey, it's all part of learning, right?
Of course. Learning a language is full of ups and downs. It takes patience, sticking with it, and embracing all the complicated parts of a new language. And, sometimes those misunderstandings turn into the funniest and most memorable learning experiences.
It's like a linguistic adventure. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from what it means to be an adult to dream homes to regretful purchases. But here's a question that's been on my mind. Remember how we talked about technology changing so fast? Vanessa's old job-selling pagers was a perfect example. What current technology do you think will seem completely outdated in 10 years?
It's fun to think about, isn't it? Trying to predict what's next, imagining a future where our gadgets seem as old-fashioned as pagers do now, just shows you how fast the world is changing and how hard it is to guess what's coming next.
Like peering into a crystal ball. What emerging technologies or trends do you think will have a major impact on our lives?
Well, fields like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and renewable energy, those are all changing so rapidly and have the potential to completely transform things. It's a really exciting time, but also a little bit scary because these technologies could change everything. Industries, what humans are capable of, even our relationship with the planet.
Exciting and daunting at the same time. Okay, let's circle back to those nature facts that blew our minds. Turtles breathing through their butts, caterpillars turning into soup, albatrosses with their incredible long-distance relationships, and the super-strength mantis shrimp. What other weird but true nature facts do you know?
Oh, the natural world is full of them. It's incredible how much there is to learn, and these strange facts really make you appreciate the diversity and complexity of life.
Do you have any favorites?
Well, there's the fact that some animals can regenerate limbs and the amazing symbiotic relationships between different species. And the resilience of life in extreme environments is mind-blowing. These facts are not only super interesting, but they also challenge us to think differently about what's possible and how interconnected all living things are.
It's like nature is this endless source of wonder. We also talked about the challenges of understanding native English speakers, which can be frustrating for language learners, especially when you're new to all the nuances of pronunciation and connected speech.
It's true, and it takes time and effort to get there. But learning any language is a journey, and it's full of both victories and setbacks. It takes patience and persistence, and being willing to embrace all the intricacies of a new language. And even when you become fluent, there are always new idioms and slang and cultural references to pick up.
It's a never-ending adventure. Now, in that Improve Your English Conversation Skills video, they emphasize the importance of giving compliments, which is such a simple thing, but it can really make a difference. What are some compliments you've received that have stuck with you? Maybe about your work, your personality, or even your style.
I love that they brought that up. Compliments are so powerful, especially when they're genuine and specific. It feels good to have your efforts and talents recognized, and it can really give you a boost.
They really can brighten your day. They also talked about using open-ended questions to keep a conversation going. What are some of your go-to open-ended questions?
Questions that start with why, how, or what do you think about are great for getting people to share more than just a one-word answer. You want to encourage them to express their thoughts and opinions and experiences, which leads to more engaging and meaningful conversations.
It's about inviting them to open up and share, right? Okay, one last question before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. Think about those small talk tips we discussed. Compliments, open-ended questions, finding common ground, being a good listener. How do you think those tips can be applied in other areas of your life, like at work or in your personal relationships?
Well, communication is essential for everything, isn't it? No matter who you're interacting with, colleagues, family, friends, being able to communicate well just makes those relationships stronger and builds trust and understanding.
Couldn't agree more. It's those everyday interactions that really build the foundation for strong relationships and a more fulfilling life. But we'll have to continue this conversation in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's amazing how those little things, giving compliments, asking the right questions, it can really make a difference in how we connect with people. It's like having a whole new set of tools for building better relationships.
It's like leveling up your communication skills. But let's get back to Vanessa and Dan for a bit. In that 1.5-hour English conversation lesson video, they talked a bit about their childhoods and how those experiences shaped who they are. Dan was really into sports as a kid. He played baseball for a while, but he said he got kind of freaked out when the coaches started pitching to him.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part.
He was like, nope, not for me, and switched to soccer and swimming.
It's funny how those early experiences, especially in childhood, can really stick with you and influence what you're drawn to, right? Maybe for Dan, it was about wanting to be part of a team, or maybe he just found soccer and swimming more fun.
Right, sometimes it's as simple as that. He also mentioned that his dad really encouraged him to play sports, thought it was good for kids. I kind of agree. What about you? Were you a sporty kid?
I think team sports can teach you a lot about working together, discipline, and bouncing back from setbacks. But there's so many other ways to grow and learn, too. It's really about finding what you're passionate about, what makes you feel good, whether it's sports or music or art or anything else.
Finding your thing, that spark. Vanessa, on the other hand, didn't do a lot of team sports, but she did love swimming. She said it was kind of a team thing, but not really, because you're on a team, but you're also competing individually. And she liked that it wasn't physically aggressive, which makes sense, because she said she wasn't a big fan of physical contact as a kid.
I could see that. Maybe for her, it was about finding that balance between individual achievement and still being part of a team. It also shows how important it is to find activities that fit your personality.
Yeah.
What one person finds exciting, another might find stressful.
Yeah, it's about finding your comfort zone where you can really shine. In another video, Vanessa and Dan talked about some upgrades they were hoping to make to their home. Dan really wanted a security system, even though they lived in a pretty safe neighborhood. He just liked the idea of having that extra layer of protection, I guess.
It's interesting, right? That need to feel safe and secure. And it can show up in so many different ways. Sometimes it's about physical safety, like a security system, and sometimes it's about feeling emotionally safe and secure in your relationships and your surroundings. Maybe for Dan, it was about wanting to feel more in control of his environment, or maybe it's just part of his personality. Some people are just naturally more cautious than others.
It's like peace of mind, right? Vanessa, on the other hand, was more focused on the practical stuff. She just wanted new laptops because theirs were like ancient and constantly breaking down. Dan's laptop was literally broken in half. They also talked about getting a new set of keys made because they'd lost their spare set and were worried about getting locked out.
Oh, I've been there. It's so relatable, isn't it? Those little everyday inconveniences and wanting to make your living space better. I think everyone goes through that. It's about wanting to be comfortable, wanting things to work well, and just having a sense of order in your life.
It's the little things that make a big difference. So what about you? Any dream upgrades for your home? Big and fancy, or more about those quality of life improvements?
Our homes really are reflections of ourselves, and they change as we do. Whether you're looking for comfort or practicality or a way to express your style. How you choose to upgrade your space can say a lot. It's about creating a space that feels truly yours.
Turning your home into a canvas. Okay, time to talk about money, because, well, it's something we all have to deal with, right? Vanessa had this funny story about always regretting buying tea at Starbucks. She said it's so overpriced and the taste is never worth it. She'd much rather make tea at home.
The classic struggle between convenience and value for money. We've all been there. Sometimes those little impulse buys really add up, and then you're left with that buyer's remorse. And it can also be tied to your values. For Vanessa, maybe it's about the principle of not overspending on something she can easily do herself.
It's about being mindful of your spending, for sure. Dan, on the other hand, didn't stress about the small stuff. He said he never really regretted cheap purchases because he just didn't give them much thought. His biggest regret: a trip to a turtle sanctuary. He'd imagined seeing these turtles up close, but they were just swimming around in these huge pools and you could barely see them. He felt like it was a ripoff, even though it was for a good cause.
I think experiences, unlike material things, hold a different kind of value. We invest so much time and emotion into them, so when they don't live up to our expectations, the disappointment can be much bigger. It sounds like Dan had a specific idea of what that turtle sanctuary would be like, and the reality just didn't measure up.
Like when a movie has way too much hype. Speaking of experiences, we also got some sources about conversation tips and small talk, like how to make small talk in English, 100 top questions and examples, and how to start a conversation in English, a guide to small talk, and even just small talk conversation starters.
It's great that there's so many resources out there for people who want to get better at conversations in English. Those kinds of guides can give you really practical tips and phrases you can use in real life, which can help people feel more confident in social situations.
Yeah, they emphasize things like giving compliments, asking those open-ended questions, the ones that don't just require a yes or no answer, and talking about shared interests.
All great strategies. It's about making a connection, being genuinely interested in the other person, and creating that comfortable space for conversation.
One source even said it's totally fine to politely excuse yourself if a conversation isn't going well or if you need to move on. Being respectful of your time and energy is important too.
That's true. You have to be aware of what's going on in the conversation, read those social cues, and know when it's time to gracefully move on.
Like knowing when to make your exit. So what are some of your favorite small talk topics? Are you a master of the well-placed compliment?
Finding common ground is often the key. Maybe it's a shared interest or a recent event or just something you notice about your surroundings. The point is to make a connection, even a small one, and create a sense of ease.
It's those little sparks that can lead to something more, right? Okay, we've covered a lot today: adulting, dream homes, buyer's remorse. But here's another question for you. Remember how we talked about how quickly technology changes? Vanessa's old job selling pagers was the perfect example. What technology that we use today do you think will be completely outdated in 10 years?
It is fun to think about, isn't it? Trying to predict the future of technology. Imagining our current gadgets becoming as obsolete as pagers are now, it really highlights how fast our world is changing and how unpredictable that future can be.
It's like we're trying to read tea leaves or something. What new technologies are you most excited about or maybe a little worried about?
Fields like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, renewable energy, they're all moving so fast, and they could really change everything. It's exciting, but also a little intimidating. Because these advancements have the potential to reshape industries, change what humans are capable of, and even redefine our relationship with the planet.
Wow, it's a lot to think about. Okay, let's get back to nature for a minute. Remember those mind-blowing facts we talked about earlier? Turtles breathing through their butts, caterpillars liquefying in their cocoons, albatrosses with their incredible long-distance relationships, the super-strength mantis shrimp. What other strange but true nature facts do you know?
Oh, and nature is just full of surprises. It makes you realize how much we still have to learn about the world around us. And those unusual, unexpected facts, they can really deepen our appreciation for the diversity and complexity of life on Earth.
Do you have any favorites?
So many to choose from. Well, the fact that some animals can regrow limbs is pretty incredible. And then there are the intricate relationships between different species. Symbiosis is fascinating. And the sheer resilience of life in the most extreme environments is mind-blowing. These facts aren't just interesting trivia. They challenge our assumptions about what's possible and highlight the interconnectedness of all living things.
It's a good reminder that there's always something new to learn about the world around us. We also touched on the challenges of understanding native English speakers, something that can be pretty frustrating for language learners, especially when it comes to pronunciation and how words are connected in natural speech.
It's true, and it's a process, a journey. There will be moments of triumph and moments of frustration. It takes dedication and a willingness to embrace the complexities of a new language. And even when we reach a level of fluency, there are always new idioms, slang expressions, and cultural references to learn.
It's a lifelong pursuit, for sure.
And that's part of what makes it so rewarding, right? The more you learn, the more you realize there's so much more to discover.
So true. And that Improve Your English Conversation Skills video, they talked about giving compliments, which is such a simple act, but it can really brighten someone's day. What are some compliments you've received that have stuck with you? Maybe about your work, your personality, or even your sense of style.
I love that they highlighted that.
Yeah.
Genuine, specific compliments have a way of staying with you. It's an acknowledgement of your efforts, talents, and the things that make you unique, and it can be such a confidence booster.
They can really make a difference. They also talked about asking open-ended questions as a way to keep a conversation going. Do you have any go-to open-ended questions that you like to use?
Starting your questions with why, how, or what do you think about is a great way to encourage people to share more than just a yes or no answer. You're prompting them to really think about their response and share their thoughts and perspectives, which makes the conversation so much more interesting and insightful.
It's like you're opening a door to deeper understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. Thinking back to those small talk tips we discussed earlier. Giving compliments, asking open-ended questions, finding common ground, being a good listener. How do you think you could apply those tips in other areas of your life, like at work or in your personal relationships?
Well, being able to communicate well is essential in every aspect of life. It doesn't matter if you're talking to colleagues, family, or friends. When you can communicate effectively, it strengthens your bonds with people, builds trust, and creates understanding.
Absolutely. It's those small, everyday interactions that really shape our relationships and make our lives richer. But we'll have to continue this conversation in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's amazing how those small things like compliments and asking good questions can really make a difference in how we connect with others. It's like we're learning a whole new language of connection.
Right. It's like leveling up your people skills. And speaking of communication, I remember Vanessa and Dan touched on the importance of active listening, too. Really paying attention, asking questions to make sure you understand, and being aware of your body language.
Those are key, no matter what language you're speaking. It's about being present, really tuning in to both the words A and D, the nonverbal stuff, making sure you're on the same page. It's not just hearing, it's really listening to what the other person's trying to say.
It's like listening with your whole self, not just your ears. They also talked about storytelling. Sharing personal stories can make conversations so much more interesting and memorable, right?
Totally. Stories have this amazing power to connect us on an emotional level. It's like creating a shared experience, even if you haven't actually lived through the same things. Stories help us understand each other and make sense of the world.
They're like little windows into each other's lives. I love that. Do you have a favorite story that you love to tell? What makes it so special?
That's a tough one. The best stories are the ones that have a bit of everything, humor, vulnerability, something that people can relate to. The kind of story that stays with you and makes you think about your own life and the connections you have with others.
Yeah, it's like weaving a tapestry of shared experiences. Now, this one source even suggested practicing small talk in front of a mirror to build your confidence. Sounds a little strange, but I can actually see how that could be helpful.
A lot of public speakers and performers do that to practice their delivery and get comfortable with how they sound and how they look. It can be helpful for anyone who wants to improve their communication skills. It lets you see yourself as others see you, and you can try different things and see what works.
Like having your own personal coach. What are some other ways people can practice their conversation skills?
Oh, there's so many ways. Talking to people from different backgrounds, joining a public speaking group, even just striking up conversations with strangers in everyday situations. Anything that gets you out of your comfort zone and gives you a chance to practice.
It's like a workout for your social muscles. Okay, one final thought before we wrap up. Remember how Dan said that playing sports helps him relax? It made me think, how do you think our ideas about relaxation might change in the future? Will we find new ways to de-stress, or will those traditional methods like sports and nature walks still be around?
That's a really interesting question. As our world keeps changing and technology becomes even more integrated into our lives, who knows how our understanding of relaxation will evolve? Maybe virtual reality will become a go-to for relaxation. Or maybe personalized meditation apps will be the norm.
Right. Imagine VR nature walks or AI meditation guides. It could happen.
It's definitely something to think about. How do we balance our need for relaxation and well-being with all these technological advancements? It'll be interesting to see what the future holds.
It's like we're on the edge of a whole new era of relaxation. This has been such a fascinating deep dive. We've explored so much, from cultural differences to communication styles to those quirky little facts about everyday English conversations. It's a good reminder that even the most ordinary topics can spark really interesting discussions and lead to some unexpected discoveries.
I totally agree. It all comes down to curiosity and that desire to keep learning and growing. By trying new things, having meaningful conversations, and being open to different perspectives, we're constantly expanding our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
And that's what makes life so exciting, right? The never-ending journey of discovery. We've reached the end of our deep dive for today, but the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep those conversations flowing. Thanks for joining us.